A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Institute Innovation and Entrepreneurship Cell of Geetarathan International Business School feels immensely delighted to welcome you all on this virtual session on national education policy and its impact on technical institutes. I, Muskan Grover, take this opportunity to welcome you all on the behalf of Geetarathan International Business School on this virtual platform for interaction with us. We have with us Ms. Mamta Rani Agarwal. Geetarathan International Business School was established in the year 2004. It is affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi, and approved by All India Council for Technical Education, Ministry of HRD, and Government of India for technical courses, and Bar Council of India for the law courses. The institute conducts various courses, namely MBA, MBA International Business, BBA, BBA LLB, and BA LLB. The institute is accredited as Category A by National Assessment and Accreditation Council and assessed as Category A+ by State Fee Regulatory Committee and rated highest grading A by Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. The institute has been rated Grade A by Academic Audit Cell of Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University consecutively from the past 8 years. GIBS has been rated number 2 twice consecutively by Times B School Survey 2018 and 2019. National education policy has the potential of changing the entire education paradigm in India. It is a progressive step undertaken by the Government of India. However, the implementation of it requires guidance. In its perpetual pursuit to deliver experiential learning and offer global exposure, GIBS is very delighted to organize this virtual session on national education policy and to discuss the topic we have with us, Ms. Mamta Rani Agarwal. Ms. Mamta Rani Agarwal is presently Additional Secretary in Association of Indian Universities. Prior to this, Ma'am worked as Joint Secretary, University Grants Commission and Director, Education, New Delhi. Ma'am has extensive academic experience of more than 20 years, working at higher education sector, apex national level academic bodies like University Grants Commission, Association of Indian Universities, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, and allied systems. NAM has a deep understanding of higher education system, functioning of regulatory bodies, universities, colleges, open and distant learning systems. Ma'am has traveled extensively and has been an international speaker at the University of Columbia in New York on urban education innovations in K-12. Ma'am has also participated in the Global Summit on Reforming School Systems in Global Cities, New York. She has been part of many academic delegations, conferences, published papers, and authored concept revision books. His Excellency, the President of India, has nominated her as his nominee on the Board of Governors of National Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Kolkata, and Institute of National Importance. Additionally, Ma'am is a member on the Board of Governors, governing bodies of many universities and colleges. She has been a resource person on various subjects such as national education policy, higher education policies, planning and implementation, benchmarking, and global ranking, gender inclusion, etc., for National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research, Chennai, and many other universities. Ma'am has recently compiled and edited 5 volumes Handbook of National Education Policy 2020, incorporating multiple facets of new education policy since its inception, with comprehensively covers school education, higher education, technical and vocational education. We welcome you, ma'am. We are honored to have you here with us today. Now I would request ma'am to take the session forward and illuminate us with her expertise. Please, ma'am.
A very good afternoon to all of you. Am I absolutely audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Thank you so very much for such generous introduction. Vice Chairman of Geetarathan International Business School. Professor Poti, a distinguished director of Geeta Ratan International Business School, convener of this conference, distinguished eminent friends from academia, other people who have been attending this conference, faculty members. I feel it is my proud privilege to share my thoughts on one of the most relevant, extant topic of today's time, that is national education policy. The government, under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, has approved national education policy in July 2020. The new education policy is different from all earlier education policies, and it paves way for transformational reforms in all facets of education: school education, higher education, and the entire academic system in the country. Also, one of the most important aspects of this education policy is that it has been formulated after an unprecedented, collaborative, inclusive, and highly participatory consultation process. And the consultation has been up to grassroots level. And you would be happy to know that more than 2 lakh suggestions were received and consultations were taken place extensively at every possible level. The comprehensive national education policy, it is an exhaustive concept document with valuable, very, very valuable insights covering all aspects of academia, be it school education, higher education, technical education, teachers education, professional education, and other key focus area. It has proposed revision and revamping of all aspects of education, that is, educational structure, regulations, governance, and creating a new system that is aligned with the aspirational goals of 21st century education. One of the significant features of the national education policy is that while trying to create a global and international academia, academic ambience, it is deeply embedded or deeply rooted with our own country's traditions and value system. The policy document is an extremely enriching composition, catering to all stakeholders, be it academic leaders who are formulating the policies, faculty, students, community, our researchers, and industry, even our society and nation. Everyone and everyone's aspirational goal have been embedded, integrated, amalgamated in this national education policy. The policy envisions a complete overhaul and re-energizing of the education system to overcome all the existing challenges and thereby deliver good quality higher education with equity and inclusion. The policy's vision includes various significant changes. I would come to each of these changes, and I have prepared a slide so that you understand it better. I have already shared it with Geeta Ratan Institute of Geeta Ratan International Business School. So whenever you have free time, you may actually access it. Meanwhile, let me just explain each and every slide to it. So kindly share my slide. Can you see the slide? Ma'am, it's all blue to me. I'm not able to see it. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
All right. So you can go to the next slide. See, so education still remains a not-for-profit activity where it is not being taken into any commercial consideration. And as the case has been that since the inception of private entities into education or say philanthropic activities into education, even in the national education policy, education continues to remain a not-for-profit activity, and it is an endeavor that the center, the state, all philanthropic activities, the industries, they all should come together and they must ensure that at least 6% of GDP, our gross domestic produce, is spent on education. This has been a long overdue vision since the inception of various educational policies, and it is yet to be seen. As of now, it is below 3%. So the endeavor is that substantial expenditure should be increased on education. Next slide, please. See, one of the major things is that as of now, say though it says that 26.3%, well, it's a little more than that. So by 2035, there is a vision, there is a goal that our gross enrollment ratio in higher education must go to 50%. So when we say that our gross enrollment ratio should be 50% in higher education, so all of you can very well imagine that it requires substantial expansion of the higher education system within the country. Next slide, please. I am not able to see my own slides. So which slide is being displayed now?
Institutional architecture, ma'am.
It's about, okay, higher education to have a rationalized institutional architecture with large, well-resourced, vibrant, multidisciplinary institutions, providing very, very high quality teaching, research, and community engagement. Now, let us first try to understand that what do we mean by multidisciplinary education? Or what is this institutional architecture which we are talking about? So, moving towards a higher education system, which is consisting of large multidisciplinary universities and colleges with at least one in or near every district. See, you are in Delhi, but then when I am addressing, I want you to understand the policy comprehensively with respect to the entire national context. So it says that multidisciplinary education and research universities, at least one in or near every district, should be mandatorily established. That should offer medium of instruction or the programs either in any of the regional languages. Suppose you talk about Delhi. So in Delhi also, if the language is Hindi or the language is Punjabi or some of the people who speak Urdu, then the instructions or programs must also be mandatorily in the regional language or the language of the region. So identification and transformation of at least one existing university, it can be a central university, it can be a state university, in each geographical region of the country to be promoted as multidisciplinary education and research universities. These universities will act as models of best multidisciplinary education of global standards in the whole country. Now, how do you create it? All the times it may not be possible to create such institutions. So clustering of existing unitary universities. For example, there are certain unitary universities. One is teaching law, one is teaching medical, one is teaching in the teachers' education, and one is like, Geetarathan International Business School. A cluster of these academic institutions or cluster of these universities can be created and transform the whole cluster from unitary to multidisciplinary institutional cluster. Now, one of the points, how can we do it? So see, I have been part of two of the committees. One is for implementation of national education policy for the government of Gujarat and also with the AICTE. So how do we do it? So through the collaborative process of resource sharing and governance. Now, how do you do this resource sharing and governance? So we may create institutional academic consortium. You may call it consortium, you can call it associations. So what happens is that the head of each academic entity, be it a university or an institution, remains one of the members of this consortium or association. And also he individually remains responsible for governing or say administering his or her own entity. However, resource sharing, best practices sharing, and even some of the courses which are not being offered by your institution, your university, can be shared, can be opted, can be co-opted by the students from the neighboring institution. So how do we do this? So while clustering, individual nature of each academic entity, distance from each other, availability of physical, academic, and digital infrastructure is to be very, very seriously considered. Next slide, please. So our next slide is that culture of empowerment and autonomy. The National Education Policy envisions that henceforth, after the implementation of National Education Policy, there would be three type of institutions. In fact, four type of institutions. One would be research intensive universities. Another one would actually be teaching intensive universities. And third one would actually be autonomous degree granting colleges. So there is an envisioning in the National Education Policy that a stage-wise mechanism should be established for granting graded autonomy to colleges. So initially the colleges are handheld, they are given mentor-mentee format, and then their accreditation is planned in a manner that through the graded autonomy, they come to a level where they are automatically, independently are in a position to grant degrees or say confer degrees. Next slide, please. The next slide is about holistic and multidisciplinary higher education. There is a strong focus on broad-based, multidisciplinary, holistic, undergrad, postgrad, and then doctorate level of education. And what should be some of the main features of this? There should be flexible curricula, creative combination of disciplines, integration of vocational education, and multiple entry and exit points with proper certification at each level. Now, how do you do it? In fact, there are slides which will follow it, but I would try to explain it from this slide itself, or maybe you can go to the next slide. So when we say broad-based, multidisciplinary, holistic undergraduation, next slide. So it can be either for 3 years or say it can be for 4 years. If suppose you exit after 1 year, so you get or you are conferred with a certificate. After 2 years, a diploma or an advanced diploma. 3 years is a bachelor's degree. 4 years, bachelor's degree with research or say honors. Or you may also have a 5 years integrated bachelor's and master's program. Now, I want you to focus on what implications it has for students and what implication it has for institutions. For students, you may actually leave your program at different stages after 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or 4 years. So, and for industry, it's very, very crucial or say very, very significant because they get different aged or they varied aged skilled manpower, and skills are also different. So a certificate one would be younger and has lower skills, advanced diploma one comparatively a little older and a better skills, bachelor's degree, of course, another level of maturity of the students who are going out with better academic content. So industry actually gets people of different skills and different ages. Also, students can come back to their education through academic bank of credit, which I will explain a little later. And in case you do an integrated 5 years program, then you also get bachelor's and master's degree in one go. Now, what implications it would have for institutions? Institutions would have one challenge, in fact, and one opportunity. What is the opportunity? That they can very, very creatively design capsule independent courses. That is, for certificate course, you have to have an independent curricula or module which can be completed in 1 year without an overlap or without spilling over to the next year. Similarly, you will have to have an autonomous, fully comprehensive course for 2 years diploma and for 3 years diploma. So very creatively and very self-sufficiently, these courses can be designed. Now, what are the challenges, especially for private funded institutions? If a student leaves after 1 year, how do you fill that vacancy? If a student leaves after second year, how do you fill those vacancies? So vertical, horizontal mobility, a lot of vertical and horizontal mobility would happen as a result of this kind of 3 to 4 years of multiple flexible entry and exit. And all these institutions would have to be prepared for this type of framework where students are mobile within a 4 year system or within a 3 years of undergrad system, and at different level students are taking admission. Someone is taking admission in second year, someone is taking admission in third year. Also, how do you actually cope up with is- students coming from higher graded institutions or higher accredited institutions and students coming from lower accredited institutions? For example, someone is coming from a NAC D grade college and someone is coming from NAC A plus plus grade college. So how do you accommodate? So these are some of the challenges where I think institutions need to work and think about it. Next slide, please. Again, master's degree. So master's degree can either be of 2 years or 1 year. And if you say 2 years, that you can, after 3 years of undergrad, you can do 2 years of master's degree. And similarly, if you have actually done 4 years of undergrad, then you need to do only 1 year of master's program. And I have already told you that if you do a 4 years undergrad, then you get it a research degree, that say bachelor in science with research, or say BSc honors, whatever the name subsequently in the national framework it would be approved of. Next slide, please. So now when we talk about PhD, so PhD can be undertaken either after a master's degree. So it can be 4 years of undergrad plus 1 year of postgrad plus PhD, or it can be 4 years of bachelor's degree in research, and immediately after that you can carry on your PhD. It is not meant, you just have to do 1 year of research program in between. MPhil has been discontinued. So these are some of the things which I think would require a lot of effort, a lot of brainstorming sessions, many opportunities, but many challenges, that as how do you really go about it. Also, when you actually think about that holistic and multidisciplinary education, so overall, a rationalized institutional architecture with large, well-resourced, vibrant, multidisciplinary institutions need to be either created, or existing universities or HEIs need to be transformed, imparting high quality teaching, learning, research, and community engagement. The Higher Education Council, or say the directorates, as we may put in different states, they may actually have an online universities or say institutions network for institutional association. And what is this network used for? It is used for cluster creation, resources, best practice sharing, collaborative research projects, coordination, and mentor-mentee hand-holding among institutes. When you talk about that, it would be a multidisciplinary education. How do you do that? So every university, every institution, every HEI is to ensure coordination among different departments, constituent colleges, affiliated colleges, and they have to have a uniform academic calendar, uniform examination schedule, uniform timetable planning, same credit assignments, multi or interdisciplinary subject selection by students, and multi and interdisciplinary research among different departments. You may even do it with other neighboring universities or colleges. Also, to promote multidisciplinary education, a wide range of papers may be offered by universities and colleges for different courses, from where students can accrue 60%, or maybe you may take 65%, or you may take 70% credit in major or core subjects, either from the same institution or institution with equal rankings. 20% programs electives and 20% open electives. Now, these electives and open electives can be in science, humanities, linguistics, arts, music, either from the same institution or from other departments, neighboring universities, colleges in either offline mode or online mode. Also, when you talk about very holistic education or multidisciplinary education, so sports, games, community outreach programs, startups, innovations, entrepreneurship should be introduced as compulsory components to promote well-being, creativity, and entrepreneurship among students. If need be, sports and allied infrastructure from adjoining universities, colleges may be shared, either as I have explained by consortium development or maybe even simply by signing the MOU. Next slide, please. So next slide is recruitment of teachers. Am I right?
Ma'am. Yes, recruitment of teachers. That is the slide.
All right. Somehow I'm not able to see a slide properly, maybe. So, see, motivated, energized, and capable faculty. I'm sure each one of you sitting here and each one of you attending this conference would agree that, they are at the core, they are the heart of an institution. Everything else is secondary and revolves around. So, students and teachers, they are at the core of entire academia. Now, some of the things which our national education policy has envisioned, and the whole of its success would depend on its success. Revamping curriculum, pedagogy, assessment pattern, and student support for enhanced student experiences. These are the factors a lot of emphasis has been laid on. Now, how do you reaffirm the whole of integrity of faculty and institutional leadership positions? So it has to be through merit appointments, career progressions. Now, this appointment and career progression, and other than teaching, research, a component has also been added, that is the service, the kind of community service or the kind of public service a person has actually rendered. So these are, reaffirming the integrity of faculty and preparing them for progressive leadership role is one of the things which this national education policy has focused on. Now, creation of conducive academic ambience of creativity, autonomy, attractive remuneration, and encouragement will go a long way in building world-class institutions as envisioned, as planned in NEP. So, in this, faculty are to be provided productive opportunities for interaction with the students, conducting research and educational activities through desired student-teacher ratio. The best part is that NEP gives you freedom to design your curricula, to design your pedagogies, to design and plan your assessment mechanism within the approved national framework, which is to be prepared by the regulator, and continuous regular in-service training. See, there is a provision that if faculty has published high impact, good quality papers, if faculty has really provided the best academic results, then you can incentivize your faculty, you can provide them fast track promotions. So that barrier of everything being based on number of years of service has been taken away. So incentivize the faculty and staff through rewards, promotions, recognition, and most important thing, movement into leadership role. And then how do you have this vertical upward movement into leadership role? Through providing the constant training, through giving them opportunities for high quality research, institutional service, and community outreach programs. I have already told you that there is a provision for fast track promotion for faculty doing high impact research, contributing to an institution or a university's growth, social upliftment of an institution, and then any faculty who has been contributing in nation building. So special allocation of funds for professional development of teachers is mandatory for institutions and should be categorically separately allotted to. Next slide, please. Whenever we talk about the ranking or benchmarking, or specifically the global ranking, since I have been a resource person on global ranking and benchmarking of the institutions, I have realized that whenever you do a comparative analysis, one area where our institutions have not been able to do well, it is the research. And I think it is also the research funding. Now, as per National Education Policy, a National Research Foundation would be established, and that foundation would be funding the research on the basis of merit through competitive, I would not use the word bidding, but through competitive assessment of the content of a research project. Now, there would not be any bar between a private funded institution or a public funded institution, and it would be a level playing field for every kind of institution. Now, in NEPs, how do we actually envisage and how can we have better timely funding for our research? So research funding should be arranged either through public or private, philanthropic, PPP, industry linkages. All this kind of partnership is mandatory and is thought of in the NEP with accountable processes and rigorous monitoring mechanism. Promotion of research across all institutes with absolutely no demarcation between government and private institution. Industry sponsored research, pooling of resources among all the institutions. And one thing which I wish to advise you, that even UG final year students or even UG students irrespective of the year, they should be co-opted for conducting research. This is the time that they have the energy, they have the passion. And I think their involvement in research can be absolutely contributing to the research ambience and the research output of an institution. Students should be utilized, they should be given live problems. They should be given live problems so that they can solve these live problems, maybe live problems of your institute, live problem of a neighboring department, or even your local community, live problem of the nearby industry through an open competition. Collaborative and multidisciplinary research among various departments, universities, HEIs. It should primarily be oriented towards regional, local, societal concerns, as well as that of national relevance and global significance. Various network degree programs like Erasmus at national and international levels need to be established. Collaborative Center of Excellence should be created for multi-interdisciplinary research with centralized instrumentation facilities, sharing of available resources among institutes, among universities, accountable processes, and continuous monitoring process. Time adherence on releasing of funding would definitely determine a better research outcome. See, one thing which I want to tell you, patent filing, it's a very cumbersome and a very difficult legal process which many of your faculties or in general faculty is not well aware of. So I feel that every institution in MOU with other institutions, or maybe all the institutions come together, and they must have a patent filing facilitation center with appropriate recognition and financial incentives to the faculty members who have been doing it. Especially this facilitation of patent filing is mandatory in case you want that the research should really be going ahead and we should have more and more registered patents and patents being granted. Equitable and inclusive education, not really so much important for your institution. However, in a larger perspective, to ensure equitable and inclusive national growth, especially of all regions, and regions which have not come to a uniform GER ratio or uniform academic achievement. So there gaps in physical, academic, and digital infrastructure need to be identified and rectified in a phased manner by the respective state governments. If a college or if a university, it is in a region which is predominantly catering to socio-economically disadvantageous groups, then these may be included in special education zone. This, for the first time, it has come in national education policy. Special education zones, like special economic zones, if any one of you are aware of, special economic zones are created to enhance for the concerted efforts for business activities. Similarly, wherever it is felt that there is a gap, special education zones are to be created where all central, state, and other government schemes and all the policies are to be implemented to the maximum effort through additional concerted efforts in order to change their educational landscape. For that matter, there is a provision that the central government as well as the state government may even allocate additional funding, special funding for such HEIs. To effectively contribute towards Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, industry-linked institutions with special provisions may preferably be established in these regions, in these special education zones of various states. Now, when you have this kind of institutions and this kind of regions, it's a Herculean task. It's a very difficult task to change their academic landscape. So, well established universities, well established institutions in their vicinity may do hand holding of such HEIs, such institutions which are in special education zone where the development, academic development has not been uniform. In the format of a mentor-mentee, these institutions may be groomed, they may be accredited in a phased manner, and they should be progressed towards graded autonomy to become degree awarding colleges and subsequently maybe large multidisciplinary universities in a phased manner. Next slide, please. I think COVID has taught us that the new era education, the new education would be different. It has posed many challenges and it has been a disaster on various fronts. But it has also have some green shoots, some very strong green shoots. And one of the green shoot would be, I think, our mental progression from brick and mortar mode to absolute virtual mode. Just look at us that today I am talking to you or I am addressing you in an absolute digital mode, and I think none of us have even met or seen each other. So the new education, the education of the future would be different. With the progression of disruptive technological advancements and COVID pandemic, I personally feel there is a paradigm shift in teaching learning process. Envisioned education is collaborative, cross-institutional, cross-cultural, multidirectional, enabling convergence of man and machine to explore new pedagogies, to explore new horizons of learning. Technology-enabled learning ecosystem will play a key role in a self-paced, self-directed, and interest-based learning with video conferencing, Skype, wikis, blogs, virtual classrooms, simulators, MOOCs, animated laboratories, and personalized data from the interconnected world being the learning techniques, some of the newer learning techniques. So, in national education policy, an autonomous body, National Educational Technological Forum, will be created to to provide a platform for the free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance learning, assessment, planning, and administration. I feel Geeta Ratan International Business School would have already progressed from offline to online. But even in times to come when COVID would not be there, adopt blended online learning to promote the use of technology optimally and to reduce the cost of education. I feel you should offer at least minimum 20% program in absolutely online mode. Accordingly, you will have to revise the curricula, assessment patterns to ensure that rote learning is replaced with holistic and applied learning. See, while establishing an online platform for your institution, you should provide end to end technological integration, that is, digital content development, suitable digital platform for teaching learning, digital pedagogy, and assessment of digital teaching learning processes. There is no point if we, at the end of a teaching learning process, we do not understand what has been the impact or what has been the outcome of digital teaching learning process. Digital infrastructure such as smart classrooms, access to internet, digital devices, accessories may be provided to all faculty members as well as to the students. Continuous and rigorous digital training programs for your faculty is the key. And what should be covered? Again, it should be from end to end. Digital content, digital delivery, digital mechanism of delivery, digital platform, pedagogy, and all the virtual assessment tools. I feel optimal utilization of government's programs such as Swayam, ePathshala, and PM eVidya are some of the platforms which are available and can be very effectively utilized. Next slide, please. So our next slide is on internationalization of education. In this, there is a very ambitious plan that India is to be promoted as a global study destination. High-performing Indian universities based on their accreditation will be encouraged to set up campuses in other countries. And top 100 universities, which are in different rankings, like Times Higher Education ranking or QS ranking or say academic ranking of world universities. These universities will be facilitated and those will be given opportunities to come and open their campuses in the country. So for any institution or for even for the Indian government or for the state government, for internationalization, international branding and marketing for Indian education system is a mandatory requirement. One of the things should be that we should be involving all our Indian alumni who are living abroad in annual conferences, annual webinars, even TED Talks, anything you can think of, you should be involving your alumni to maintain that connect, that institute to global connect. Also, a single website or platform may be developed by the institute for showcasing all the capabilities of your institute, your achievements to the global community. One of the government's program, Study in India program, it should be popularized and the government may simplify admission process. Providing of hygienic and safe hostel facilities for foreign students is also a must. Fellowships, scholarships for foreign students may also be considered on merit basis, and I think it would further encourage inward mobility of foreign students. Next slide, please. Which is our next slide? Academic governance and regulation.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So in this Higher Education Commission of India, HECI, this will be set up as a single overarching umbrella body for entire higher education. It would exclude medical and legal education, of course. So HECI will have 4 independent verticals: National Higher Education Regulatory Council, NHERC, it would be for formulation or formulating regulations; General Education Council for standard setting, Higher Education Grants Council for funding, and National Accreditation Council for accreditation. Two important things: that public and private higher education institutions will be governed by the same set of norms, one for regulation, two for accreditation, and third for various academic standards. Next slide, please. All right, so promoting multilingualism, I think all of us would agree, each one of you sitting here would agree that our receptivity, our learning ability is the best in our own language, in our mother tongue. So, NEP being a country of diversity, a country of multilingual regions, a country which actually has had so many scheduled languages, classical languages. So, there is a provision, and some of the institutions have initiated an innovative step in this direction. I'm not too very sure how many takers would be it, but NEP recommends promotion of Indian regional classical languages. One is by setting up of an Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation, where all the languages would be studied, their content development for UG and PG program would also take place. So what I personally feel is, in my personal opinion, if a pool of expert teachers, either retired or survey, can be created and maintained for development of quality academic content in any of the local language, in the regional language, and translation of digital content in indigenous languages of the region, developing indigenous pedagogies, and imparting training to other teachers. So, rich ancient literature in any of our regional languages, any language, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Odia, Punjabi, Sindhi, any of our regional language, or even Hindi, Sanskrit, may be translated into English, and it should be accessible through virtual medium to reach the masses. And then in this way, it would also be preserved for posterity in a digital format. Next slide, please. Promoting Indian knowledge system. If this is the slide.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Next
Promoting multilingualism.
I have already finished multilingualism.
Yes. Promoting Indian knowledge system. Yes, ma'am. I have changed that.
So promoting Indian language system. India has been a rich country in our own traditional knowledge system, which actually has emanated from our Gurukul Parampara. So what needs to be done is, there are parts which need to be done by the central government, and then there are parts need to be done by the state government. Maybe your institutions may also take lead in certain things. So research into Indian knowledge system in different streams and appropriating it to the current knowledge, validating it, application to the social needs may be carried out. And I feel especially in multidisciplinary education and research universities, which would be eventually functioning as the model universities. Now, documentation and digitalization of the literature available for different Indian knowledge systems after proper validation, and making it available for masses, for everybody, I think it is also a must. Promotion and systematic research in the field of Ayurveda, naturopathy, yoga, astronomy, Vedic mathematics. These are some of our forte, our niche areas. These needs to be promoted, and a systematic research needs to be undertaken. Starting of new department in your own institution to take up the task of preservation and promotion of Indian knowledge system, languages, Indian civilization and culture be established. Next slide. Academic Bank of Credit. I think all the students, if the students are attending, I'm not too very sure how many students are attending. I think this is something which is for their utmost important. Normally, when we open a bank account, it is about money. But another bank account, just understand with the analogy that an academic bank of credit is, or ABC, if I may call it, an account for each student would be created in a bank, which is actually an academic bank. And what would you be depositing there? You would not be depositing money, but you would actually be depositing the credits earned by you in different phases of your life. What is it for? It is for ensuring vertical, horizontal, and say time spaced mobility of students. I'll just take an example. Suppose for MBA, only for example, 100 credits are a must. You have done, say, 40 credits from Geeta Ratan International Business School. And then you had to move to, say, Mumbai to Narsi Monji Institute. So then you deposit these 40 credits in your academic bank. And when you move to, for whatever reason, your parents are transferred, you had to go there, whatever be the reason, then you don't have to actually study all 100 credits one more time. You actually have to only accrue remaining 60 credits from Narsi Monji institutions, and 40 credits from Geeta Ratan Institute of International Business School would actually count for your grant of MBA degree. Of course, there will have to be a very well defined framework as to how these credits be transferred among institutions of same level, among institutions of same accreditation, and among institutions which differ in their accreditation status. So credit transfer among similarly placed accredited institutions, HEIs, may be allowed within the countries, even within other countries also. So comparative evaluation of the curriculum be carried out for the purpose of transfer of credit wherever need arises. Detailed uniform mechanism for credit transfer among comparable accredited universities, HEIs, would be developed by HECG. Next slide, please. That is Higher Education Commission of India. Lifelong learning, open and distance learning is to be expanded. Online courses, digital repositories, improved student services, credit-based recognition, MOOCs, SWAYAM, Pathshala, e-Pathshala. These all have to be taken into account for enhanced gross enrollment ratio and to ensure lifelong learning. Next slide. Now, National Mission of Mentoring. It's a very, very important thing. Our policy and visions, a national mission for mentoring. And for this, a large pool of outstanding senior retired faculty, not only for this, even retired officers from various levels, state government, central government, with specifically the ability to teach in any of the Indian languages or regional languages. And once these master teachers are available to us, then they would be mentoring, they would be providing professional support to the universities and various college teachers. One is for Indian traditional system of education. Another thing is for the content in regional languages and also developing content in regional languages. Some of the things I have already covered, suitable financial, it also recommends socio emotional and academic support for mentoring socio-economically disadvantageous students. So special education zone would be created for that. Multidisciplinary education and research universities at par with IITs, IIMs, ISHRs are to be created. Few more things which probably I don't have a slide, but would I speak on for about a minute, is integration of vocational and academic education. Education can only be truly holistic or say truly multidisciplinary when vocational and academic education amalgamate absolutely in a seamless vertical and horizontal mobility into each other. So I feel in every state, Department of Education and Labor and Employment should work in very close coordination with National Skill Development Corporation. So skill and vocational education is to be imparted within the schooling and university system in a seamless manner with resource sharing, planning and imparting of vocational education, should it continue to take important valuable inputs from industry, MSME, related academic fields, and adoption of traditional crafts of the region. Policy for seamless migration from ITIs to diplomas and diplomas to degree must be adopted, must be made hassle-free with vertical and horizontal mobility. NSDC and NOS. NOS is National Occupation Standards. These levels need to be introduced and implemented by NHEQF. These levels may replace the concept of degrees based specifically on learning outcomes. So no demarcation between vocational and academic education. How do we do that? By bringing the commonalities in learning outcomes at different levels. So components of agriculture, legal, healthcare, hygiene, entrepreneurship are to be included, starting from school level and migrating to higher education level. Effort must be made to incorporate more vocational subjects, soft skills, coordinate with the local industry, local artisans, cooperative societies, and various organizations, even your nearby workshop for faculty engagement, students internship, community engagement, and empower your entire neighborhood. This kind of education which we are envisioning, this kind of education which we are thinking of, I think you have not come to the next slide, miscellaneous. Next slide, please. So for this kind of education requires a whole lot of revamping of the entire higher education system, and more than that, revamping of our attitudes, our psychological leanings, our way of looking at education. And I think education policy is a very comprehensive, very well composed, enriching document. However, its success truly depends on how well actually it is implemented. And its implementation is based on each one of us and our open attitude, our flexibility to learn and unlearn. And finally, its success would only depend on as much as you and me are ready to make it implementable. My next slide. Me and Dr. Veena Bhalla, we have compiled and edited a Handbook of National Education Policy 2020. It's a 5 volumes book, and this is all about national education policy. Should you have any question, please feel free to ask me. I'm there to reply. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us with your words of wisdom. You have inspired us all today. And thank you for such a detailed analysis about the NEP. The slides are absolutely amazing, and they tell us exactly what we need to do and what is required. And thank you so much. I think all of us has enjoyed. And I have a few questions. If you allow, I can ask you.
Yeah, please.
And thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, so the first question we have is, who will be auditing that institutions are following NEP, and what repercussions will they have to face if they don't follow the government suggestions? That is the first question I have.
See, as of now, there was primarily University Grants Commission, which had been doing both the things, that it was formulating various regulations, and it was also granting or dispersing the grant. So in this specific case, now HECI, I have already told you, Higher Education Commission of India is to be established with 4 different verticals. I came up with the slide. And when that comes up, that, one organization will be formulating, and that organization will also have the authority to penalize, which UGC does not have as of now. So primarily the institution which will be formulating the policy, that is the policy formulation vertical of HECI, will be responsible for ensuring that education is delivered in the way it has been envisioned in national education policy. So if you really look at it, as of now, it is a concept document. How would it be implemented is to be drafted, regulated, regulations are to be formed, and at least this Higher Education Commission of India, this needs to be enacted by an act of the parliament. So this still needs to be done by the central government.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Another question if you give permission, I can ask you that, please.
Please.
Wouldn't NEP increase more brain drain is the question.
See, if the education is global in its perspective, then what do you feel? Should there be more brain drain or should there be less brain drain? If suppose we feel, why do we go out? Let's first understand that. What is brain drain? Brain drain is that, our institutions study up to undergrad here, use all the national resources, and then they migrate abroad and contribute to that nation building rather than contributing in their own domestic nation building. So what happens is, why do we go abroad? Of course, this is something debatable. But for me, students go abroad for the overall comprehensive availability of lifestyle, ambience, that ambience. So if we go to developed countries, it means we consider their overall comprehensive ambience better than ours. So if we provide, along with education, overall better comprehensive academic ambience and per se ambience, I don't think any one of us would like to go out, because at the end of the day, where we are raised, where we are brought up, we belong to that place, and our emotional leanings are naturally, psychologically to that place. So if our education becomes global, I think brain drain will definitely be reduced.
Yes, ma'am. Very true. I totally agree with you. One last question, ma'am. How will NEP affect overall jobs in future? Should we focus on developing any particular skills?
It's not about NEP. Just forget about NEP. The question is, what kind of jobs would be there in future, and how would the job scenario change? So first of all, it's nothing to do with NEP, but let's talk about artificial intelligence. Let's talk about Internet of Things. Let's talk about machine learning. So McKinsey has published a very well-known report. I think 35% jobs in future which are repetitive in nature. Now, what are the jobs which are repetitive? If suppose there is a security personnel is standing and he's checking iCard of everybody, that can be done by machine. If there is an accountant who is continuously entering some data, that can be done by machine. See, if suppose at the same time, there was somebody who was taking our attendance, that can be done by biometric again. So any job which is repetitive without having any innovative brain involvement will go away in times to come. So all of you need to, in fact, even to teaching, even to repetitive teaching, even all those accountants' job, even security personnel's job. So all the jobs which involve repetitively doing the same thing on a daily basis without having any significant input from human brain will go away. So we have to be mentally prepared for that. And all 37 low-level jobs will definitely be going away, not because of NEP or any other thing, but because of the changing paradigm shift in the technology, because of the disruptive technology. What we need to be prepared for, we need to be prepared for the skills which are needed. So if you have to develop AI, you need that skill. If you need to develop Internet of Things, you need that skills. If you need to teach across the globe with digital pedagogies which are global in nature, then you would always be accepted. As a teacher, you are available everywhere. So if you can teach a student sitting in Bhutan, if you can teach a student sitting in Singapore, and your knowledge, your pedagogy, your digital content, your delivery mechanism is as perfect as it can be from anywhere, then, but yes, the skills needed for future are different, much different from the skills needed today. So you need to understand it from that perspective.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of Geetharathan International Business School, I would like to extend my gratitude towards your humble acceptance for joining us and enlightening us, our students, and all the faculty members and all of us with your in-depth knowledge and your words of wisdom. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you everyone for joining. I think we can end here.
All right, all right. Thank you so very much. I have not seen Professor Hoti. If he's around, let me just say thank you to him for giving me an opportunity to speak on one of the very valuable topic. And I hope I have been able to clarify your doubts and you have had certain important, valuable take homes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Professor. Unfortunately, Professor Hoti could not be with us because of some technical glitch. I shall extend your gratitude on his behalf also, ma'am. Our heartfelt thank you, and definitely I'll convey your wishes to him.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.